I discovered my wife was cheating on me with my own brother. During the divorce signing, I canceled the 3 credit cards that funded her luxury lifestyle. While they were celebrating their expensive wedding in Italy, they received a court summons that made them collapse. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. I never imagined that 30 years of marriage could crumble in the span of 15 minutes. But there I was, standing in the doorway of my own office, watching my wife, Olivia, wrapped in the arms of my brother Bruce, their bodies pressed against the mahogany desk, where I had built my dreams for over 2 decades. The sound that escaped my throat wasn't quite human. It was something between a gasp and a moan, the kind of noise an animal makes when it's been mortally wounded, but doesn't yet understand it's dying. They heard it, of course. Olivia's green eyes met mine over Bruce's shoulder, and for a moment I saw something flicker there. Not shame, not regret, just irritation. As if I had interrupted something important, something that mattered more than the 30 years we had spent building a life together. "Carl," she said, her voice steady, almost bored. She didn't even have the decency to pull away from him. "We need to talk." Bruce turned around slowly, his face flushed, his graying hair disheveled. My younger brother, the one I had protected and supported through 3 failed businesses, 2 bankruptcies, and countless personal disasters. The brother who had eaten at my table every Sunday for the past 5 years since his last divorce. The brother who had borrowed $47,000 from me just 8 months ago to get back on his feet. "Jesus, Carl," he said, running a hand through his hair. "This isn't how we wanted you to find out." The casual tone of his voice hit me like a physical blow. "This isn't how we wanted you to find out. Not, this is a mistake, or this just happened." They had planned this conversation. They had discussed how to tell me that my life was over. I gripped the doorframe, my 62-year-old legs suddenly feeling unstable beneath me. The office around us seemed to pulse and blur at the edges. This was the same room where I had celebrated my first $1 million deal, where I had planned surprise vacations for Olivia, where I had dreamed of the vineyard I wanted to buy in California when I retired. The leather chairs, the awards on the wall, the family photo on my desk, everything looked the same, but nothing would ever be the same again. "How long?" My voice came out as a whisper. Olivia finally stepped away from Bruce, smoothing down her black dress, the one I had bought her for our anniversary 3 months ago. "Does it matter?" "How long, Olivia?" She sighed as if my need to know was tedious. 2 years. 2 years. While I was working 14-hour days to expand our business, while I was planning our dream retirement, while I was faithful to a marriage I thought was solid, they had been laughing at me behind my back. Every family dinner, every holiday, every time Bruce had sat at our dining table talking about his loneliness, he had been sleeping with my wife. Bruce cleared his throat. "Look, Carl, I know this is hard to hear, but Olivia and we've fallen in love. Real love. The kind you read about." I stared at him, this man who shared my DNA, my childhood memories, my parents' genes. "Real love? She deserves better than what you've been giving her," he continued, his voice gaining confidence. "When was the last time you took her anywhere nice? When did you last tell her she was beautiful? You've been treating her like she's part of the furniture." The accusation hung in the air like poison gas. Part of me wanted to defend myself, to list all the ways I had tried to show love, all the sacrifices I had made. But another part of me, the part that was rapidly calcifying into something cold and hard, simply absorbed the words and filed them away for later use. Olivia walked over to the window, her high heels clicking on the hardwood floor with the same rhythm they had clicked for 30 years of our marriage. "I've been unhappy for a long time, Carl. You know that." Did I know that? I thought back to recent months, searching for signs I had missed. She had seemed distant, yes, but I had attributed it to stress from her garden club presidency and her mother's health issues. She had been spending more time out of the house, but she said she was helping Bruce with his new consulting business. She had been less interested in physical intimacy, but we were in our 60s. Wasn't that normal? So what now? I asked. I want a divorce, she said without turning around. I've already spoken to a lawyer. We can do this amicably, split everything 50-50. You keep the business, I keep the house. We're both adults here. The casual way she dismantled our 3 decades together made my chest feel hollow. She had planned this too. While I was still reeling from the discovery of their affair, she was already 10 steps ahead, dividing up our life like it was a business transaction. And Bruce? I looked at my brother, who had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. What about the money you owe me? What about the fact that you've been screwing my wife in my own office? His discomfort vanished, replaced by something that looked almost like defiance. The money will get paid back. And as for Olivia, she's not your property, Carl. She's a woman who deserves to be cherished, not ignored. I wanted to hit him. For the first time in my adult life, I wanted to put my hands around my brother's throat and squeeze until that self-righteous look disappeared from his face. Instead, I took a deep breath and stepped further into the office, closing the door behind me. You're right, I said, quietly. She's not my property. But this business is mine, and Bruce, since you're so concerned about property rights, I think it's time you found somewhere else to conduct your consulting business. Bruce's face darkened. You can't kick me out. We have a partnership agreement. No, I corrected, walking to my desk and opening the bottom drawer where I kept important documents. You have a consulting contract that I can terminate with 30 days' notice, which I'm giving you now. I pulled out a piece of company letterhead and began writing by hand. The scratch of the pen was the only sound in the room. Olivia had turned away from the window and was watching me with a curious expression, as if she was seeing me clearly for the first time in years. You're being vindictive, she said. No, I replied without looking up. I'm being practical. Bruce needs to learn that actions have consequences, and you... I finished writing and looked up at her. You need to understand that this marriage gave you certain securities that you're about to lose. For the first time since I had walked into the office, I saw uncertainty flicker across her face. What do you mean? I folded the termination letter and handed it to Bruce, then reached into my wallet and pulled out 3 credit cards. The American Express Black Card with its $50,000 limit. The Business Visa with $35,000, the Premium MasterCard with $25,000, cards that Olivia had used freely for years to maintain the lifestyle she had grown accustomed to. These cards are all in my name, I said, setting them on the desk between us. The house is in my name. The cars are in my name. Your checking account, the one you think has $18,000 in it? It's actually a joint account that I control. The color drained from Olivia's face. You're trying to scare me. I'm trying to educate you. For 30 years, you've lived in a bubble where money appeared when you needed it. You never had to think about how it was earned or where it came from. You never had to worry about insurance or taxes or investments because I handled all of that. I stood up and walked around the desk until I was standing directly in front of her. She smelled like the expensive perfume I had bought her for Christmas, mixed with Bruce's cologne. The combination made my stomach turn. You want a divorce? Fine. You'll get exactly what the law requires me to give you and not 1 penny more. You want to marry my brother? Wonderful. I hope you'll be very happy together in whatever apartment he can afford on his consulting income. Olivia's composure finally cracked. You bastard. After everything I've done for you, all the years I've supported your career. What exactly have you done for me? The question came out colder than I intended. Please enlighten me. What sacrifices have you made? What support have you provided? Because from where I'm standing, you've been a very expensive hobby. The slap came fast and hard, snapping my head to the side and leaving a sharp sting across my cheek. Bruce stepped forward, but I held up a hand to stop him. Don't, I said quietly. You've both done enough damage for one day. I walked back to my desk and sat down, opening my laptop as if they weren't even there. I have work to do. Please see yourselves out. They stood there for another minute, probably expecting me to break down, to beg, to fight for a marriage that had been dead for 2 years without my knowledge. When I didn't look up from my computer screen, I heard Olivia's heels click toward the door. "This isn't over, Carl," she said. "Yes," I replied, finally meeting her eyes. "It is." After they left, I sat in the silence of my office for a long time. The late afternoon sun slanted through the windows, casting everything in golden light that should have been beautiful but felt cold and empty. I thought about the vineyard in California, the dream I had shared with Olivia so many times, rolling hills covered in grapevines, a small house with a wraparound porch, the two of us growing old together in peace. That dream was dead now, but maybe that wasn't entirely a bad thing. Maybe it was time to dream new dreams, ones that didn't include people who could betray me so casually. I picked up my phone and called David Morrison, my lawyer and one of the few people I trusted completely. "David," I said when he answered, "I need to see you first thing tomorrow morning. It's about my marriage, and it's going to be complicated." As I hung up the phone, I realized something that surprised me. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt completely clear about what I needed to do. The pain was still there, sharp and constant, but underneath it was something else. Something that felt almost like relief. I built this place with my own hands, and now they thought they could destroy it. But they had forgotten something important. I didn't just build this business, I built myself. And I was far from finished. 3 weeks after discovering the affair, I sat across from David Morrison in his downtown law office, watching him flip through a stack of financial documents that painted a picture I hadn't expected to see. The morning light filtered through his tall windows, casting sharp shadows across papers that revealed just how thoroughly Olivia had been living off my success. "Jesus Christ, Carl," David muttered, pushing his reading glasses up his nose. "Look at this March statement. $12,437 in a single month." I leaned forward to examine the credit card statement he was holding. The American Express Black Card, the one I had given Olivia for emergencies and special occasions. The charges were itemized in neat columns. Neiman Marcus, $850. Whole Foods, $412 for what appeared to be a single shopping trip. A spa, day at the Four Seasons, $629. Dinner at Jeffrey's restaurant, $345 for 2 people. 2 people. While I was eating microwave dinners at my office, working late to secure the Henderson contract, she was dining on 8-course tasting menus with my brother. "And this is just one card," David continued, pulling out another statement. "The Visa shows another $8,600 in the same month. Mostly clothing stores and what looks like a weekend in San Antonio. Hotel Macara, 2 nights, $1,500. I remembered that weekend. Olivia had told me she was visiting her sister Caroline in Houston. Carolyn, who, according to these receipts, was apparently living it up in San Antonio's most expensive hotel with room service charges that included 2 bottles of Dom Perignon at $450 each. "How long has this been going on?" David asked. I rubbed my temples, feeling a headache building behind my eyes. The affair? 2 years, according to them, but these spending patterns— I gestured at the papers spread across his desk. They look like they go back at least that long, maybe longer. David picked up a calculator and started adding figures. The mechanical clicking of the keys filled the silence as he worked through months of statements. Finally, he set the calculator down and looked at me with the expression of someone delivering bad news to a patient. In the past 24 months, across all 3 cards, she's spent approximately $218,000. $218,000. I sat back in my leather chair, the number hitting me like a physical blow. That was more than most people made in 4 years. That was a house. That was my daughter's entire college education, if I had been blessed with children. "And Carl," David said gently, "there's something else you need to see." He pulled out a different folder, this one containing bank statements from an account I didn't recognize. "This is a joint account at First National Bank. Your name is on it as a secondary holder, but I don't think you've ever used it." I stared at the account number, trying to remember when I might have signed papers for a joint account at First National. Then it hit me. 3 years ago, when we were refinancing the house, Olivia had asked me to sign several documents. She said it was all routine paperwork, insurance forms, and bank authorizations. I had trusted her and signed where she pointed, not reading the fine print. The interesting thing about this account, David continued, is the pattern of deposits. Look here. Monthly transfers from your business account, always the same amount, $3,500 transferred on the 15th of every month for the past 36 months. $3,500 every month for 3 years, $126,000 that I'd never authorized, never approved, never even known about. Money that had been automatically transferred from my business account into this joint account that Olivia controlled. How is this legal? I asked. Technically, it's not illegal, David said carefully. You're listed as an account holder, so the transfers aren't unauthorized in the strictest sense, but the fact that you didn't know about them, combined with the pattern of spending we're seeing, he gestured at the credit card statements, this could constitute financial fraud, especially if we can prove deliberate deception. I thought about all the times Olivia had complained about money over the years, how she said we needed to be more careful with our spending, how she worried about retirement. Meanwhile, she was secretly funneling $3,500 a month into an account she used to fund her affair. There's more, David said, and I wondered how much worse it could get. Bruce has been receiving payments from this account, regular transfers, usually around $2,000 a month. It looks like Olivia has been financially supporting their relationship using your money. The room seemed to tilt slightly. Not only had my wife been cheating on me with my brother, but she had been paying him to do it. With my money. Money that I had earned through 60-hour work weeks, through stress that had given me my first gray hairs at 45, through sacrifices I had made because I thought we were building something together. What are my options? I asked. David set down the papers and looked at me directly. Legally, you have several paths. We can pursue criminal fraud charges, though that would be a long, messy process. We can use this information in the divorce proceedings to argue that she's not entitled to half the marital assets. Or, he paused, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth, we can be more creative. What do you mean? You're the primary account holder on all 3 credit cards. You have the legal right to cancel them at any time, for any reason. The joint account at First National can be frozen immediately since you're a listed owner, and Bruce's consulting contract with your company. David flipped through another set of documents. According to this, you can terminate it with 30 days' notice, which you've already given. The implications of what he was suggesting began to sink in. They don't know I know about the financial situation. Exactly. Olivia signed the divorce papers last week without even reading the financial disclosure section. She just assumed she'd get half of everything visible, the house, the business, the obvious accounts. She has no idea that you've discovered her secret spending or the hidden account. I stood up and walked to David's window, looking down at the bustling street below. People hurried along the sidewalks, focused on their own lives, their own problems. None of them knew that 30 stories above them, a 62-year-old man was planning the most important decision of his life. When is their wedding? David asked. September 15th, they're having it in Italy, some villa in Tuscany that Olivia found online. I turned back to face him. She showed me the pictures last week, said it was going to be the wedding of her dreams. Villa San Michele, $1,700 a night for the bridal suite. Paid for how? The credit cards, I assume. She's been planning it like money is no object. David nodded slowly. The timing could be perfect. If we wait until after they've committed to all the major expenses, the venue, the catering, the flights, and then cancel the cards, they'd be stranded, I finished, in a foreign country with no way to pay their bills. It would certainly send a message. I thought about Bruce, probably right now sitting in some restaurant with Olivia, planning their future together, making jokes about his boring older brother who was too stupid to see what was happening under his own roof, laughing about how easy it had been to fool me, how naive I was to trust them. There's something else you should consider, David said. If we're going to do this, we need to make sure you're protected. Bruce will probably try to claim that the money Olivia gave him was a gift, not theft. And Olivia might argue that she deserves access to the accounts during the divorce proceedings. What do you suggest? David pulled out a legal pad and began writing. We create a paper trail that shows discovery of fraud. I'll file a motion with the court documenting the unauthorized transfers and requesting that all joint accounts be frozen pending investigation. It's all legitimate legal action, but the timing— He looked up at me. The timing is everything. I walked back to my chair and sat down, the weight of the decision settling on my shoulders. Part of me, the part that had been raised to be a good brother and a faithful husband, whispered that this was too harsh, that I should be the bigger person, let them go with dignity, wish them well. But another part of me, the part that had been betrayed and lied to and stolen from, wanted justice. Not revenge exactly, but consequences. Real consequences that matched the magnitude of their betrayal. How long do we have? I asked. The divorce will be finalized on August 28th. After that, your legal obligations to Olivia are officially severed. The wedding is September 15th. If we act on August 29th, David calculated quickly. That gives them about 2 weeks to realize what's happening and try to make alternative arrangements. 2 weeks to find another way to pay for a $50,000 wedding. Assuming they can, Bruce's consulting business, according to his tax returns that I subpoenaed, shows an income of about $37,000 last year. Olivia has no income of her own. Thought about the villa in Tuscany, about the 100 guests they had invited, about the string quartet Olivia had hired and the 5-course meal she had planned. She had spared no expense because she thought she was spending unlimited money. My money. David, I said finally, I want you to prepare all the paperwork, the motion to freeze the accounts, the cancellation of the credit cards, everything, but I don't want to file anything until after the divorce is finalized. And Bruce's consulting contract? That ends exactly 30 days from when I gave him notice, August 20th, I believe. David made notes on his legal pad. This is going to be devastating for them. Good, I said, and was surprised by how calm my voice sounded. For 30 years I played by the rules. I was faithful, I was generous, I was trusting, and they treated that like weakness. They thought I was too stupid or too weak to fight back. I stood up and gathered my copy of the financial documents. They're about to learn that there's a difference between being kind and being foolish. As I left David's office, I felt something I hadn't experienced in weeks. Control. For the first time since discovering the affair, I wasn't reacting to their choices. I was making my own. The elevator descended 30 floors in silence, carrying me back to street level where my real life waited. In exactly 5 months and 3 days, my wife would become my ex-wife. In 5 months and 20 days, she would marry my brother in a villa overlooking the Tuscan countryside. But first they would learn what it felt like to fall. $58,000 in 1 month. On what? Soon they would find out that question had a very expensive answer. The divorce papers felt heavier than they should have as I sat in the lawyer's conference room on August 28th, watching Olivia sign away 30 years of marriage with the same casual indifference she might use to sign a grocery receipt. Her manicured fingers gripped the Mont Blanc pen I had given her for our 10th anniversary, the gold band catching the fluorescent light as she scrawled her signature across document after document. Initial here, David said, pointing to a section about asset division, and here, regarding the business ownership. Olivia barely glanced at the papers before marking each spot. She was wearing the black Chanel dress she had bought 3 months ago, $847 according to the American Express statement I had memorized. Her hair was styled in the elaborate updo that cost $215 every 6 weeks at that salon in Westlake. Even her divorce outfit had cost me more than most people spent on rent. "Are we almost finished?" she asked, checking the Cartier watch on her wrist. Another gift from my credit card, purchased during one of her shopping therapy sessions while she was sleeping with my brother. "Bruce and I have a meeting with the wedding planner at 3. The wedding planner. I had to suppress a smile at that. They were probably discussing final details for their Tuscan dream wedding. The 5-course dinner for 120 guests, the imported flowers, the string quartet flown in from Rome, every detail meticulously planned and financially dependent on credit cards that would cease to exist in approximately 6 hours. "Just a few more signatures," David said smoothly. He caught my eye for just a moment, the slightest nod confirming that everything was proceeding exactly as we had planned. "Mrs. Holloway, this section confirms that you understand the terms regarding ongoing financial support." "What ongoing financial support?" Olivia looked up sharply. "We agreed there wouldn't be any alimony." "That's correct," David said. "This just confirms that both parties understand they are financially independent as of the date this divorce is finalized. No continued access to joint accounts, credit cards, or business assets." Olivia shrugged and signed again. She had no idea what she was signing away because she had never bothered to understand where our money came from or how it was managed. In her mind, money simply appeared when she needed it, like water from a faucet. The idea that the faucet could be turned off had never occurred to her. My lawyer, Margaret Chen, slid another document across the table. "This is the final asset division. Mr. Holloway retains full ownership of Holloway Enterprises and all associated accounts. Mrs. Holloway receives the agreed-upon settlement of $250,000 to be paid within 30 days. $250,000. It was less than what she had spent in the past 18 months, but it was still generous by any legal standard. It was also exactly what I owed her according to Texas law, half of our marital assets minus half of the debt she had accumulated without my knowledge. "And that's it?" Olivia asked. "I can go?" "That's it," I said, speaking for the first time in over an hour. "You're officially free to marry whomever you choose, whenever you choose." She looked at me then, really looked at me, and for a moment I thought I saw something flicker across her face. Uncertainty, maybe, or second thoughts. But then she stood up, smoothing down her expensive dress, and the moment passed. "Good," she said. "Bruce is waiting in the lobby. We have a wedding to finish planning." After she left, I sat in the conference room for another 20 minutes, staring at the papers that had just legally erased 3 decades of my life. David and Margaret began packing up their files, but I couldn't seem to move. It was done. The marriage that had defined my adult life was officially over. "How do you feel?" Margaret asked gently. "Free," I said, and realized I meant it. "Terrified and free." David checked his watch. "It's 2:47. The banks close at 5. If we're going to do this, do it," I said. The next 3 hours passed in a blur of phone calls and paperwork. David had prepared everything meticulously. The motion to freeze the joint account at First National Bank was filed at 3:15, approved by Judge Harrison at 4:23, and executed by the bank at 4:41. The 3 credit cards, American Express, Visa, and MasterCard, were officially canceled at 4:55, just 5 minutes before the banks closed for the day. By 5 o'clock on August 28th, Olivia and Bruce had gone from having access to over $100,000 in available credit to having exactly 0. The joint account that had been automatically funding their lifestyle for 3 years was frozen. The monthly transfers that had been paying for Bruce's apartment, his car, his entire existence, stopped immediately. But they wouldn't find out until tomorrow. I drove home slowly, taking the long way through the hills west of Austin. The late summer heat shimmered off the asphalt, and the cicadas buzzed in the live oak trees that lined the winding road. This was the last time I would drive to the house in Westlake Hills, the house that would belong entirely to Olivia in 30 days, along with the mortgage payments and property taxes she had never bothered to understand. The house looked exactly the same as it had for the past 15 years. Manicured lawn, perfectly trimmed hedges, the fountain in the circular driveway that cost $1,200 a month to maintain. Olivia's white Mercedes was gone. She was probably still with the wedding planner, excitedly discussing linens and flower arrangements that would never be paid for. I walked through the rooms one last time, looking at furniture we had chosen together, artwork we had bought on vacations that now seemed like elaborate lies. In the master bedroom, Olivia's walk-in closet was filled with thousands of dollars worth of clothing, shoes, and accessories. Designer handbags that cost more than most people's cars, a jewelry collection that could fund a small business, all of it purchased with money she had stolen from me to impress a man she was cheating with, while lying to my face about our financial future. On the nightstand was a framed photo from our wedding day. We looked so young, so hopeful. I had been 28, she had been 24. We thought we would grow old together, maybe have children, certainly build something lasting and meaningful. The man in that photograph could never have imagined that the woman smiling beside him would one day systematically betray him in every way possible. I picked up the photograph and studied it for a long moment, then set it back down face down on the nightstand. My phone rang at 7:30 that evening. I was sitting in my new apartment downtown, a temporary place I had leased while I figured out what came next. The caller ID showed Bruce's number. "Carl," his voice was strained, "I need to talk to you." "About what?" "About the business, about my contract. Look, I know things have been difficult between us, but we're family, we can work this out." I walked to the window of my apartment and looked out at the city lights beginning to twinkle in the gathering darkness. "Your contract ended at 5 o'clock today, Bruce, exactly 30 days from when I gave you notice. But I've got clients depending on me, projects in progress. You can't just cut me off like this." "I can, and I did. You're welcome to start your own consulting business, but you won't be doing it on my company's time or with my company's resources." There was a long pause. "This is about Olivia, isn't it? You're punishing me because we fell in love." Fell in love. As if it was something that had happened to them beyond their control, rather than a choice they had made every day for 2 years while lying to my face. "This is about business, Bruce. Nothing more, nothing less. Carl, please, I'm your brother. Doesn't that count for something?" I thought about all the times I had bailed him out over the years. The failed restaurant in 1998 that cost me $67,000. The investment opportunity in 2005 that turned out to be a pyramid scheme. Another $43,000. The gambling debts, the failed marriages, the constant financial crises that I had solved because he was family. "Yes," I said finally, "being my brother should have counted for something. You should remember that the next time you're tempted to sleep with someone's wife." I hung up before he could respond. 20 minutes later, Olivia called. "Carl, what did you do to Bruce? He's having some kind of panic attack about his job." "I terminated his contract, as was my legal right." "On the day of our divorce? Really? That's incredibly petty, even for you." I almost laughed. Petty. She thought this was about petty revenge, about hurt feelings and wounded pride. She had no idea what was coming. "Bruce will be fine," I said. "He's a survivor. He'll figure something out." "We're supposed to leave for Italy in 3 days, Carl. Bruce needs that income for the wedding expenses." Then maybe he should have thought about that before he decided to have an affair with his brother's wife. There was a sharp intake of breath. "You know what? I'm glad we're getting divorced. You're cold and vindictive, and I should have left you years ago." "You should have," I agreed. "But you didn't, because leaving would have meant giving up the credit cards." The silence on the other end of the line stretched for nearly 10 seconds. "What's that supposed to mean?" she asked finally. "Nothing," I said. "Have a wonderful wedding, Olivia. I hope it's everything you dreamed it would be." After I hung up, I poured myself 3 fingers of Macallan 18-year-old scotch and sat in my empty apartment, thinking about tomorrow. By this time, tomorrow, evening, they would know. The credit cards would be declined, the accounts would be inaccessible, and the financial house of cards they had built on my back would come crashing down. I raised my glass to the window, to the city lights, to the future that stretched ahead of me like an open road. "Let me see how well you do without my money," I said to the empty room. The scotch burned going down, but it was a good burn. The burn of a man who had finally stopped being a victim. The call came at 3:27 in the morning, Austin time. I knew it was 3:27 because I was lying awake in my new apartment, unable to sleep, when my phone lit up with an international number. 9:27 in the morning in Tuscany, which meant they had probably been trying to solve their problems for several hours before swallowing their pride enough to call me. I let it ring 4 times before answering. Hello? Carl. Olivia's voice was tight, strained with an edge of panic that I had never heard before in 30 years of marriage. We need to talk. About what? About the credit cards. There's been some kind of mistake. They're not working. I sat up in bed, reaching for the lamp on my nightstand. Through my apartment window, I could see the Austin skyline in the pre-dawn darkness, peaceful and quiet. Half a world away, my ex-wife was discovering what financial reality felt like. What do you mean they're not working? I mean they're being declined, all of them. The American Express, the Visa, the MasterCard, even for small charges. The hotel is saying there's a problem with the payment authorization. I walked to my kitchen and started making coffee, cradling the phone between my ear and shoulder. Have you called the credit card companies? Of course I've called them. Her voice was rising now, the panic bleeding through her attempt to stay calm. They said the accounts have been closed, permanently closed. Carl, what did you do? I did what any reasonable person would do after discovering that their spouse had been stealing from them. I protected my assets. The silence on the other end of the line stretched for nearly 15 seconds. I could hear voices in the background, Italian voices, rapid and agitated. Bruce saying something about calling his bank in Austin, the sound of a door slamming. Stealing? Olivia's voice was barely above a whisper. What are you talking about? The joint account at First National Bank, $3,500 a month for 3 years, money that you transferred from my business account without my knowledge or permission, money that you used to pay for your affair. Another long silence. Then, how did you find out about that? Does it matter? The point is, you stole over $120,000 from me, Olivia. Did you really think there wouldn't be consequences? I heard her take a shaky breath. Carl, please. We can work this out when we get back. But right now we're in Italy. We have 120 people here for our wedding, and we can't pay for anything. The hotel bill alone is going to be $18,400. $18,400. For 6 nights at Villa San Michele, in the bridal suite that Olivia had chosen because it had the best view in Tuscany. The same suite where she was probably planning to celebrate her new marriage while completely dependent on money she had stolen from her previous husband. That sounds like a problem you need to solve with your new husband. Carl, don't do this, please. You're not a cruel person. You're right, I said, pouring water into my coffee maker. I'm not cruel, but I'm also not stupid, and I'm not your personal bank anymore. Bruce's voice came on the line. He must have grabbed the phone from Olivia. Carl, this is insane. You can't just strand us in a foreign country over a business dispute. A business dispute? I actually laughed out loud. Bruce, you've been sleeping with my wife for 2 years while living off money she stole from me. That's not a business dispute. That's fraud. Look, I'll pay you back every penny, okay? Just unfreeze the cards so we can get through the wedding. How exactly are you going to pay me back? Your consulting business made $37,000 last year, and that income stream just ended. You have no job, no savings, and no visible means of support. What are you going to pay me back with? I could hear him breathing heavily on the other end of the line. There has to be something we can work out, some kind of payment plan. There is something you can work out, I said. You can figure out how to pay for your own wedding with your own money. I hear Italy has excellent public transportation, very affordable. Carl! I hung up before he could finish whatever he was going to say. The coffee finished brewing and I poured myself a cup, adding cream from the small refrigerator in my temporary kitchen. Outside my window, Austin was beginning to wake up. Early commuters heading to work, joggers starting their morning runs, the city stirring to life. Normal people living normal lives, probably never imagining that halfway around the world, an elaborate destination wedding was imploding in spectacular fashion. My phone rang again immediately. This time I didn't answer. It rang 4 more times over the next hour, but I let each call go to voicemail. At 7:30, I finally listened to the messages. The first was from Bruce, his voice more desperate now. "Carl, I'm begging you, as your brother. The wedding is supposed to start in 6 hours. The vendors are demanding payment up front. The photographer, the florist, the caterer, they won't do anything until they see payment. Please, just call me back." The second message was from Olivia, crying, "Carl, they're threatening to cancel everything, the flowers, the music, the dinner, all of it. 120 people flew here for our wedding. My mother is here, Bruce's kids are here. Please don't do this to us, please." The third message was Bruce again. "The hotel manager just came to our room. They want payment for the entire stay up front, or they're going to ask us to leave. Carl, we have nowhere to go. Our return flights aren't until next week." The fourth message was interesting. It was from someone with an Italian accent. "Mr. Holloway, this is Giuseppe Martinelli from Villa San Michele. I am calling because there appears to be some confusion about payment for the wedding celebration today. Your guests have informed me that you are responsible for the charges, but we have been unable to process payment. The total amount due is $47,865. Please contact me immediately at—" I saved that message. It might come in handy later. At 9 o'clock, David Morrison called me. "Carl, I just got a very interesting phone call from a law firm in Florence, Italy. Apparently your ex-wife and brother are in some kind of financial difficulty." "Are they now?" The lawyer was asking about the frozen accounts, whether there was any way to get emergency access to funds. He seemed to think this was all some kind of misunderstanding that could be resolved with a quick phone call. I walked to my window and looked down at the street below. People heading to work, carrying coffee cups and briefcases, focused on their own lives and problems. None of them stranded in a foreign country, unable to pay for the luxury lifestyle they had stolen from someone else. What did you tell him? The truth, that the accounts were frozen due to suspected fraud and that any questions about access would need to go through proper legal channels in the United States. How long would that take? Weeks, months if they contest it, and that's assuming they can prove the transfers were legitimate, which they can't. At 11:30, my phone rang with another international number. This time, it wasn't Olivia or Bruce. It was a woman with a crisp British accent. "Mr. Holloway, this is Jennifer Cromwell from the American Embassy in Florence. I'm calling about 2 American citizens who have contacted us regarding a financial emergency." "Oh?" Mr. Bruce Holloway and Mrs. Olivia Holloway have requested assistance in contacting their family about an urgent financial matter. They've indicated that you might be able to help resolve their situation." "I see. And what exactly is their situation?" "They appear to be unable to pay for their accommodations and other expenses related to a wedding celebration. They've asked us to facilitate communication with family members who might be able to provide assistance." I sat down heavily in my chair. They had actually contacted the American Embassy. The desperation must be even worse than I had imagined. "Ms. Cromwell, I'm afraid I can't help them." "Mr. Bruce, Holloway is my brother, but we've had a falling out over some business matters, and Mrs. Olivia Holloway is my ex-wife as of yesterday. Our divorce was finalized, and I have no legal or financial obligations toward her." "I see. They had indicated that this was some kind of misunderstanding about frozen bank accounts?" "There's no misunderstanding. The accounts were frozen because money was taken from them without authorization. It's a legal matter that's being handled by the appropriate authorities." There was a pause. "Mr. Holloway, I have to ask, are you aware that they have approximately 120 wedding guests who are also affected by this situation?" 120 guests. People who had flown to Italy expecting to attend a lavish celebration, only to discover that the whole thing was built on stolen money. I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. "Ms. Cromwell, I appreciate your call, but this isn't my problem to solve. My brother and ex-wife created this situation through their own choices. They'll have to figure out how to resolve it." After I hung up, I made myself lunch and tried to read, but concentration was impossible. Every few minutes, my phone would ring with another international number, and I would let it go to voicemail. By the end of the day, I had 17 missed calls and 11 voicemails. The last voicemail was from Bruce, and his voice was completely broken. "Carl, they canceled everything. The whole wedding. The guests are scattered all over Florence trying to find places to eat dinner. Olivia's mother is so embarrassed she won't speak to us. The hotel gave us until tomorrow morning to pay, or they're calling the police. I don't know what we're going to do." I deleted the message without saving it. That evening, I treated myself to dinner at my favorite restaurant in Austin, prime ribeye, perfectly cooked, a bottle of Caymus Cabernet that cost more than most people spent on groceries in a week. I sat alone at a table for one, watching the sunset through the restaurant's windows, thinking about the wedding that should have been happening at that very moment in Tuscany, the string quartet that wouldn't play, the 5-course dinner that wouldn't be served, the 120 guests who had traveled halfway around the world to witness a celebration that had been built entirely on stolen money and broken trust. I raised my wine glass to the sunset. "Signore, your card has been declined. All 3 cards." The words they must have heard over and over throughout the day. The same words that had turned their dream wedding into a public nightmare, their romantic getaway into a financial disaster. I finished my wine and paid the check with cash. For the first time in months, I slept soundly. The process server found them at the Austin Bergstrom International Airport on September 23rd, 8 days after their scheduled return from Italy. I wasn't there to witness it personally, but David Morrison had arranged for a photographer to document the moment when Bruce and Olivia received the court summons that would change the rest of their lives. The photographs arrived in my email that evening while I was sitting in my downtown apartment, reviewing real estate listings for properties in Northern California. I had been thinking seriously about that vineyard dream, the one Olivia and I had shared for so many years. Now it would be mine alone, funded by the money she hadn't managed to steal and the business she had tried to help destroy. In the first photograph, Bruce and Olivia looked exactly like what they were, 2 people who had just endured the most humiliating week of their lives in a foreign country. Olivia's usually perfect hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, her designer outfit wrinkled and stained. Bruce looked like he had lost 15 pounds, his clothes hanging loose on his frame, his face gaunt with stress. The process server, a professional-looking woman in her 40s, was handing Bruce a thick manila envelope. His face in the photograph showed the exact moment of recognition, when he understood what he was being given. Olivia was looking over his shoulder, her mouth slightly open, her eyes wide with the kind of fear that comes from knowing your carefully constructed world is about to collapse entirely. The summons was for criminal fraud charges. 3 counts of wire fraud, 2 counts of identity theft, and 1 count of conspiracy to commit financial crimes. The evidence David and I had compiled over the past month was comprehensive and devastating. The unauthorized account transfers, the forged signatures on bank documents, the systematic theft of over $126,000 over a period of 3 years. But the criminal charges were just the beginning. The second envelope contained a civil lawsuit for treble damages under the Texas Theft Liability Act, not just the return of the stolen money, but 3 times that amount, plus attorney fees, plus punitive damages for the emotional distress they had caused. The total amount we were seeking was just over $900,000, $900,000 that neither Bruce nor Olivia had any realistic way of paying. My phone rang at 7:30 that evening. It was a number I didn't recognize, but I answered anyway. "Carl, this is Tom Bradley. I'm representing your brother and ex-wife." Tom Bradley. I knew the name. He was one of Austin's most expensive criminal defense attorneys. The fact that they had somehow managed to hire him suggested they had found money somewhere, though I couldn't imagine where. "Mr. Bradley, I was wondering when I'd hear from you." "Carl, I think there's been a serious misunderstanding here. My clients are willing to make full restitution for any unauthorized account transfers, plus reasonable interest. Surely we can resolve this without dragging everyone through a criminal trial." I walked to my kitchen and poured myself a glass of wine. Through my window, I could see the lights of downtown Austin beginning to twinkle in the gathering dusk. Somewhere out there, Bruce and Olivia were probably sitting in Bradley's office, desperately trying to figure out how to avoid spending the next 5 to 10 years in federal prison. What kind of restitution are they proposing? Full repayment of the transferred funds over a reasonable time period, say 60 months at 5% interest. That would work out to about $2,800 per month. $2,800 per month from two people who currently had no jobs, no savings, and no visible means of support. Bruce's consulting contract was terminated, and Olivia had never worked a day in her adult life. The math was absurd. And where exactly would this $2,800 per month come from? There was a pause. Bruce is confident he can rebuild his consulting business, and Olivia is exploring employment opportunities. Employment opportunities. Olivia, who hadn't held a job since she was 23 years old, who had no college degree, no professional skills, and no work experience beyond volunteer positions at charity galas. The idea of her working in the real economy was almost laughable. "Mr. Bradley, I appreciate the offer, but I'm not interested in a payment plan. Your clients didn't just borrow money from me, they stole it, while lying to my face for 3 years, while conducting an affair that destroyed a 30-year marriage. The time for reasonable accommodation has passed." "Carl, think about what you're doing here. These are criminal charges. If convicted, your brother could spend 8 to 12 years in federal prison. Is that really what you want?" I thought about Bruce sitting in that conference room where I had discovered him with Olivia, telling me that she deserved better than what I had been giving her. I thought about all the money I had lent him over the years, all the times I had bailed him out of financial disasters, all the family dinners where he had sat at my table and smiled at me while planning to betray me in the worst way possible. "Mr. Bradley, what I want is justice. Your clients made choices. Now they get to live with the consequences. And Olivia, she's your wife of 30 years. Doesn't that count for something?" "Ex-wife," I corrected. "As of August 28th, and no, it doesn't count for anything. She made her choice when she decided to steal from me to fund her affair." After I hung up, I called David Morrison at home. "They tried to negotiate," I told him. "I figured they would." "What did you tell them?" "That I'm not interested in payment plans or plea bargains. How strong is our case?" David's voice was confident. "Bulletproof. The bank records alone are enough to convict them both. The fact that they used the stolen money to fund an affair just makes it worse. And the timing, stealing money right up until the day before your divorce was finalized, shows clear intent to defraud." "What about their lawyer? Tom Bradley isn't cheap." I wondered about that too, so I did some checking. Apparently, Olivia's mother mortgaged her house to pay Bradley's retainer, $50,000 borrowed against a house that's been in the family for 40 years. Olivia's mother, Margaret, a sweet 73-year-old woman who had always been kind to me, who had no idea her daughter was a thief and an adulteress until the wedding disaster in Italy. Now she was risking her home to pay for lawyers to defend crimes she probably didn't even understand. "That's unfortunate," I said and meant it. "Carl, you know they're going to keep trying to negotiate, right? Bradley is good at what he does. He'll probably try to get to you directly, maybe through mutual friends or family members." He was right. Over the next 2 weeks, I received calls from Bruce's ex-wife, Sandra, from Olivia's sister, Caroline, from 3 different family friends, and even from our former pastor. All of them delivered variations of the same message. Surely I could find it in my heart to forgive, to be the bigger person, to remember that families should stick together no matter what. The most difficult call came from my elderly Aunt Helen, my father's sister, who had always been like a second mother to both Bruce and me. "Carl, honey," she said, her voice frail with age and emotion, "I know they hurt you terribly, but Bruce is still your baby brother, and families are supposed to forgive each other." I had to close my eyes and take a deep breath before answering. "Aunt Helen, I understand why you're calling. But this isn't about forgiveness, this is about consequences. Bruce and Olivia committed serious crimes. If I don't hold them accountable, who will? But prison, Carl, your own brother in prison? He put himself there, Aunt Helen. I didn't make him steal from me. I didn't make him sleep with my wife. Those were his choices. He was just confused, in love. People do stupid things when they're in love." "Stupid things, yes. Criminal things, that's different." The trial was set for January 15th. As the date approached, the pressure to settle intensified. Bradley made increasingly desperate offers: full restitution plus 20% interest, community service instead of prison time, public apologies, even the suggestion that Bruce and Olivia would move out of state and never contact me again. I rejected every offer. 2 weeks before the trial, David called me with unexpected news. "They want to change their pleas to guilty," he said, "all charges, in exchange for sentencing recommendations of probation instead of prison time." I was sitting in my car outside a real estate office in Napa Valley, having just toured a beautiful 50-acre vineyard that was exactly what I had dreamed of for years. The asking price was $1.8 million. Expensive, but well within my means now that I wasn't supporting two thieves who had been bleeding me dry for years. What does that mean exactly? It means they're admitting they committed the crimes. No trial, no possibility of acquittal, no chance to claim they were innocent. Guilty pleas on all counts with the understanding that the prosecution will recommend probation and restitution instead of prison sentences. I looked out at the rolling hills of Napa Valley, covered in neat rows of grapevines that stretched to the horizon. This could be my new life. Clean air, honest work, peace and quiet after decades of betrayal and manipulation. And if I agree to this, you get your money back, plus interest. They get felony convictions on their records but avoid prison. The civil lawsuit would be settled as part of the criminal restitution. And if I don't agree, then we go to trial. They're almost certainly going to be convicted anyway, but there's always a small chance something could go wrong. And even if we win, collecting the civil damages could take years. I sat in my car for a long time, watching tourists walk through the vineyard, tasting wine and enjoying the California sunshine. This was what I wanted now. Not revenge, not the satisfaction of watching Bruce and Olivia in prison uniforms, but simply the chance to start over somewhere clean and new. "David," I said finally, "accept the plea deal." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. Let them plead guilty. Let them pay back every penny they stole, and then let them figure out how to live with the consequences." The plea hearing was scheduled for December 10th. I didn't attend. I had no desire to see Bruce and Olivia one more time, to watch them stand before a judge and admit their crimes. David represented me and called afterward with the results. "It's done," he said. "They both pled guilty to all charges. Olivia was sentenced to 3 years probation and restitution of $63,400. Bruce got 5 years probation and restitution of $62,600 plus an additional $50,000 in civil damages." "When do they have to pay?" "The restitution is due within 60 days. The civil damages can be paid over 12 months, but if they miss any payments, the full amount becomes due immediately. $176,000. It was less than they had actually stolen, but it was more than they had any realistic way of paying. Bruce had no job and no prospects. Olivia had no skills and no experience. Neither of them had any assets worth seizing. What happens if they can't pay? Then the probation gets revoked and they go to prison after all. That night I opened a bottle of champagne and toasted my empty apartment. Tomorrow I would put in an offer on the vineyard in Napa Valley. In 60 days I would receive a check for $176,000, money that would help fund my new life. And Bruce and Olivia, they would learn what it meant to live without other people's money to sustain them. "You are hereby summoned for criminal fraud charges." The words that had changed everything, delivered in an airport by a professional process server who treated it like just another job. But for Bruce and Olivia, it was the end of the world they had built on lies and theft. Justice, I had learned, didn't always look like revenge. Sometimes it looked like a guilty plea, a probation sentence, and the slow, grinding realization that actions have consequences. Sometimes justice looked like freedom. 2 years after I bought the vineyard in Napa Valley, I woke up smiling. It had become my morning routine. opening my eyes to the sight of grapevines stretching toward the distant mountains, breathing in air that smelled of earth and growing things instead of betrayal and broken promises. For the first time in 30 years, I was living a life that belonged entirely to me. The vineyard was everything I had dreamed it would be and more. 53 acres of Cabernet Sauvignon and Chardonnay with a modest stone house that felt more like home than the Westlake Hills mansion ever had. I had learned to prune vines, to test soil acidity, to read the subtle signs that told me when the grapes were ready for harvest. My hands, which had spent decades shuffling papers and making deals, were now permanently stained with honest dirt. I was having my morning coffee on the front porch, watching the fog lift off the valley floor, when my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but the area code was Austin. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Carl?" The voice was female, tentative, with an accent I couldn't quite place. "This is Maria Santos from the Travis County Probation Department." My stomach tightened slightly. I hadn't heard anything about Bruce or Olivia in over 18 months, not since the last restitution payment had been made. As far as I knew, they had both managed to complete their probation sentences without incident. "What can I do for you, Mrs. Santos?" "I'm calling about your brother, Bruce Holloway. I'm afraid I have some difficult news." I set my coffee cup down on the porch railing, steeling myself for whatever was coming. "What kind of news?" "Mr. Holloway passed away 3 days ago. Heart attack. He was 47 years old." The words hit me like cold water. Bruce was dead. My younger brother, the one I had protected and supported for most of his adult life, the one who had betrayed me in the most devastating way possible, was gone. "I'm calling because you're listed as his next of kin," Ms. Santos continued. "The hospital tried to reach you, but they had an outdated phone number." I walked to the edge of my porch, looking out at the vineyard that represented everything I had built after walking away from my old life. "What about Olivia? His wife?" There was a pause. "Actually, that's part of why I'm calling. Mrs. Holloway, well, she left Austin about 6 months ago. We lost contact with her, and she violated the terms of her probation by leaving the state without permission. There's currently a warrant out for her arrest." Olivia had run. Somehow that didn't surprise me. When the going got tough, when the money ran out and the consequences became real, she had done what she always did, looked for an escape route. "Ms. Santos, I appreciate you calling, but I'm not sure why you're telling me this." "Well, sir, there are some arrangements that need to be made. Mr. Holloway had no assets, no life insurance, no savings. The county is prepared to handle the burial, but if family wanted to claim the body—" I closed my eyes, feeling a wave of complicated emotions wash over me. Bruce was gone. Despite everything he had done, despite the betrayal and the theft and the years of manipulation, he was still my little brother. The boy I had taught to ride a bike, the teenager I had bailed out of trouble more times than I could count, the man I had loved despite his flaws. "I'll take care of it," I said quietly. "Sir, the arrangements, I'll handle them." 3 days later, I was back in Austin for the first time since moving to California. The city looked the same but felt foreign, like a place from a dream I had once had but could barely remember. I stayed in a downtown hotel, the same neighborhood where I had lived in that temporary apartment, while my old life fell apart. The funeral home was small and modest, nothing like the elaborate affairs Bruce had always preferred. I chose a simple service, a decent casket, a burial plot in a cemetery on the outskirts of town. The total cost was $8,300, money I paid without hesitation, despite everything that had happened between us. The service was held on a Thursday morning in early March. I sat in the front row of a largely empty chapel, looking at a casket that contained the brother I had lost long before his actual death. Behind me, scattered across the pews, were maybe 15 people, a few former colleagues, some distant relatives, neighbors who barely knew him. Olivia wasn't there, of course. She was somewhere in the wind, probably in another state, possibly using another name, running from consequences that would eventually catch up to her. I wondered if she even knew Bruce was dead. The pastor, a young man who clearly had never met Bruce, delivered a generic eulogy about the importance of forgiveness and the hope of redemption. I listened politely but felt disconnected from the words. This wasn't about redemption or forgiveness. This was about the end of a story that had gone wrong somewhere along the way. After the service, as the small group of mourners filed out, an elderly woman approached me. I recognized her as Mrs. Patterson, Bruce's neighbor from his last apartment. "Mr. Holloway," she said, her voice soft with sympathy. "I'm so sorry for your loss." "Thank you." She hesitated, then reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. "Bruce gave me this about 6 months ago. He said if anything ever happened to him, I should make sure you got it." I took the envelope with Bruce's familiar handwriting on the front. For Carl. It was sealed and felt heavy, as if it contained several pages. "He was a troubled man," Mrs. Patterson said. "But in the end, I think he knew he had made mistakes." I didn't open the letter until I was back in my hotel room that evening. I ordered room service and a bottle of wine, then sat by the window looking out at the Austin skyline while I worked up the courage to read my dead brother's final words. The letter was 4 pages long, written in Bruce's careful script. "Carl, if you're reading this, then I'm gone and you're probably the one who had to deal with the mess I left behind. I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry about a lot of things. I know you'll never forgive me for what I did with Olivia, and I don't expect you to. What we did was unforgivable. I betrayed you in the worst way possible, and then I made it worse by trying to justify it, trying to make it your fault somehow. I was wrong about everything. The truth is, I was always jealous of you. You were the successful one, the responsible one, the one who had his life figured out. I was always the screw-up, always needing to be rescued. And instead of trying to be better, I resented you for being everything I couldn't be. Olivia saw that resentment and used it. She convinced me that you didn't appreciate what you had, that you took her for granted, that she deserved better. She made me feel like I was saving her from a loveless marriage instead of destroying a family. I was stupid enough to believe her. The funny thing is, after we got together, I realized she didn't love me either. She never loved me. I was just a way to hurt you, a way to get back at you for some imagined slight. When the money ran out, when the consequences became real, she made it clear that I was just a means to an end. I've been living alone for the past year, working construction when I can find it, living in a studio apartment that costs $400 a month. Olivia left me the day after your lawsuit was finalized. She said she never wanted to see me again, that I had ruined her life, as if I was the only one who made bad choices. I tried to find her a few months ago to apologize, to see if we could at least part as friends. But she had moved away without telling anyone where she was going. The probation officer said she violated the terms of her sentence and disappeared. I guess she finally found her escape route. I want you to know that I tried to pay back every penny of the restitution. I worked double shifts whenever I could get them, lived on ramen noodles and cheap beer, saved every dollar I could. I know it doesn't make up for what I stole, but I wanted to honor the agreement. I also want you to know that I'm proud of you for walking away, for refusing to let us destroy you the way we destroyed ourselves. I heard through mutual friends that you bought a vineyard in California, that you're living the life you always talked about. I'm glad. You deserve to be happy. I know I don't have the right to ask for forgiveness. What I did was unforgivable. But I hope someday you can find peace with what happened. I hope you can remember the good times we had as kids before I became the person who betrayed you. Take care of yourself, Carl. You're a better man than I ever was. Bruce. I read the letter 3 times, then folded it carefully and put it back in the envelope. Outside my window, Austin sparkled in the darkness, a city full of people living their own complicated stories. Somewhere out there was the house where Olivia and I had been married, the office where I had discovered their affair, the courthouse where I had signed divorce papers that freed me from a life I didn't want anymore. But I felt no nostalgia for any of it. That life belonged to a different person, a man who had believed in things that weren't real and trusted people who didn't deserve it. The next morning, I flew back to California. As the plane climbed away from Austin, I looked down at the city shrinking below me and felt something I hadn't expected. Closure. Bruce was gone, Olivia was a fugitive somewhere, and I was free to live whatever life I chose. Back at the vineyard, I threw myself into the work of harvest season. The Cabernet grapes were perfect that year, full of sugar and complexity, ready to become wine that would age gracefully and bring pleasure to people I would never meet. There was something deeply satisfying about creating something beautiful and lasting after spending so many years dealing with people who only knew how to take and destroy. On a warm evening in October, I was walking through the vineyard at sunset, checking the last rows of Chardonnay that would be harvested the following week. The light was golden and soft, filtering through leaves that were just beginning to turn yellow. In the distance, I could hear the sound of laughter from a wine tasting at the neighboring vineyard, tourists enjoying an evening in wine country. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. For a moment, my chest tightened, old habits from a time when unexpected messages usually meant trouble. But when I read the message, I smiled. "Mr. Holloway, this is David Morrison. Just wanted to let you know that Olivia Holloway was arrested in Phoenix yesterday on the outstanding warrant. She'll be extradited back to Texas to serve the remainder of her probation sentence in county jail. Thought you'd want to know. Hope all is well with you in California." I typed back a brief reply. "Thank you for the update. All is very well here." Then I put my phone away and continued, walking through my vineyard. Olivia's story was over, at least as far as I was concerned. She would spend the next year or so in jail, then emerge to face a world that had moved on without her. She would have to figure out how to live without credit cards, without someone else's money, without the ability to charm her way out of consequences. But that was her problem to solve, not mine. As the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold, I thought about Bruce's letter. He had asked me to remember the good times we had as kids, and for the first time since discovering the affair, I found that I could. I could remember teaching him to throw a baseball, helping him with his homework, the way he used to follow me around like a devoted puppy. Those memories didn't erase the betrayal, but they didn't have to. People were complicated, capable of both love and cruelty, sometimes within the same conversation. Bruce had been both the little brother who looked up to me and the man who stole from me. Olivia had been both the woman I had loved for 30 years and the person who had systematically betrayed that love. The difference was that I no longer needed them to be anything other than what they were. I no longer needed their approval, their love, their presence in my life. I had found something better. The ability to live authentically, without pretense or performance, accountable only to myself and the work I chose to do. That night, I opened a bottle of my own wine, a Cabernet from my first harvest, aged for 2 years in French oak barrels. It was good wine, honest wine, made from grapes that had grown in soil I had tended with my own hands. I sat on my porch, sipping the wine and listening to the sounds of the valley settling into darkness. For the first time in 30 years, I woke up smiling, and I knew I would wake up smiling tomorrow and the day after that, and for all the days to come. I was 64 years old, and I was finally free.